Welcome everybody to the Prospect Cup. We're in week number 2. We got round 4 coming right at you. It's Possible and LaFon gonna be bringing you today's matches. I already can't speak English, LaFon. We're getting off to a great start here. Thankfully, we're gonna have better matches than I can speak here today. First up, we're starting off in the Eastern Division. It's gonna be Company 8 versus Hour Zero.
And I think this is one that I think we can kind of have some expectations. You got a chance to cover Hour Zero last week, if I'm not mistaken, and you had some thoughts on, sort of their possibility, their power levels, if you will. So I'm excited to see what they bring to the table. One thing to kind of keep an eye out on is the raw mechanics of this team. Can they sort of overcome that and become a cohesive unit, right? Alt economy and so forth being stuff that I think this team needs to focus on from what we saw from them last week. That being said, Company 8, their opposition, it's a little bit of a different story for them, at least early on.
Yeah, it's their stream debut, so we don't really have much expectations for Company 8 other than the fact that they come into this with a 2-1 score line. One of those wins, admittedly, off of a forfeit, so 1-1 in actual matches that they've had to play. So let's see how they step it up here against Hour Zero, who notably do have a sub in today. Now, last week, my favorite player to watch for Hour Zero was Cupcaked. It's going to be Paradox stepping in for her today. So, little bit of a sub, little bit of a ringer maybe coming on in. They're going to have to keep it strong and keep that synergy locked down.
Certainly, and I think one thing, speaking of synergy, one thing we have to kind of draw our attention to is the DPS duo, because that's going to be a huge difference maker. I think early on in this kind of matchup, we're starting off in control, as always, Busan, the first map of the night, and Paul, looking at this, Synod and Viral are going to have to, I think, come out here on a very aggressive tempo and make a real difference in this first part of the match.
Yeah, last week, Synoid and Viral had this good dynamic where Synoid was playing the hit scans, playing at range, and Viral was pulling a lot of pressure in the back line. So if one of them was getting focused, the other one would find an opening, right? Now, I'm very interested to see how they play into what Company 8 are supposedly bringing out. Should have maybe expected this. Tamaki has listed himself as a Doomfist one trick. So coming on into this, it's a very haphazard composition, I'll say, from Company 8. They're going to be able to dive in with that Doomfist. Tamaki already really low, going to be able to get those shields on him and force the Immortality Field from Hour Zero. And after that, Train is down. Good start for Company 8. And they split Hour Zero as well, trapping most of the roster in that tiny room where Tamaki can take advantage.
That was a clean and efficient engage indeed from Company 8. And I mean, their composition really relies on the Brawn. As soon as that first Immortality Field goes down, it's all in Company 8's favor, right? And it's all about bringing out those defensive cooldowns. We are going to get a quick pause here as perhaps some technical difficulties that will be dealt with in a moment. But I want to talk about the difference here between the composition, right? Tamaki on the Doomfist specifically, Paul, because you highlighted that on the outro. We've seen in Overwatch League this past weekend, actually, how strong Genji is. And I think benefiting from the fact that you've got both Genji and Doomfist, you can sort of exacerbate just the damage throughput you're able to sort of extend on a target, right? So the dash resets through the entirety of the team, but then you get the instant burst damage of the Doomfist. And if you're willing to commit to it as an entirety as a squad, I think it can do a lot of damage. And in fact, that's what it does early on.
Well, let me ask you though about I can't quite say off tank, so I'm just going to say the Reinhardt.
Sure.
For Company 8, right? Because most of this composition is an all-in dive, right? You got Moira, Lucio supports, the Winston as one of the tanks, and then you were talking about how the DPS just want to go full-blown bananas. Reinhardt feels like he kind of just waddles up to the fight after it's already started.
You remember, to answer your point, I don't know if you remember back in the day on the EU ladder when people used to call dive Reinhardt. The whole and I mean,
hit charge and go in.
Yeah, exactly. Not to say that this is exactly a dive Reinhardt, because that's not really a thing, but I think it benefits the same kind of idea. It's just a heavy brawl style. And think of the cleave that goes through and how sort of much utility he can bring in terms of CC, in terms of if he needs to in the middle of a moment shield up and give cover to his Doomfist, I think is also a big part of that. This is really a composition that's designed to go all in. And if you think about the other tanks that could kind of come into play, there isn't really a whole lot that fits that category. So I think the Reinhardt, as counterintuitive as it sounds, really is kind of the dive target that was joked about so frequently in the past.
Sure. Well, let's talk about what Hour Zero have been running in response to this thus far, right? I mean, they only walked out the gate, right? I doubt they were expecting Ryan Doomfist to come out against them here. But you know, when you've got things like the Brigitte, like the Baptiste, you'd kind of expect a stronger anti-dive. Brig has been changed. I won't say nerfed, but I will say changed recently. Do we still feel as confident in this double shields, more poke-esque composition from Hour Zero going into this heavy dive?
Seeing the double shield work, you look to the Overwatch League in the
Sure.
past weekend as being a key component of that. I think the problem is though is that the engage was just wrong from Hour Zero. They walk into a closed room and they section off Paradox from the rest of the squad. You can't really heal. You know, it's a really difficult place to heal if you're the Baptiste in that situation. So I think this is less about the composition being a poor counter and more that it's just a bad read on an engage. And coming into this next fight, I'm interested to see if there's a sort of a re-evaluation on how they want to approach. High ground being taken right now as Hour Zero enters.
And we're back in on Busan. Pause is over. JD getting pretty aggressive up there. Nearly at that primal rage. Ultimate's nearly across the board. Nasa's gonna go down early though. Viral finds that first pick, dashes out, but not out far enough. So he'll be trading his own life with that. Now Coalescence. Some momentum here on the defense. To Company 8. They're gonna try and snowball this straight to the implication matrix. Earth Shatter only catches one, and there's no elimination off that. Aster pretty low too, and now ILY has to come up with the goods on the blade and manages to do so. It's a messy fight right now, but Company 8 are holding on.
They are, but for how much longer? If Tamaki doesn't get a pick off here, you can easily see this go back into Company 8's favor, but this should really end the push right there.
There's those picks you were looking for. He's gonna take out both enemy DPS, and DK Bao is getting staggered.
A good clean fight in terms of the ending of it, not so much the start, but now it comes down to the reset. You've got that messy fight out in your favor. You're going to get these clean off picks. Yeah, so that just stalls it out even more. I mean, you're in spawn, you get deflected. Even with Aster going down, I don't really see Hour Zero coming back in with a clean fight here unless they get a miracle pick on the entry.
Well, Sinoid's pretty much already back. Viral actually swapping over to the Torbjorn for even more pressure on all of these people diving in. Yet another aggressive engage here. Ramazan Surge going out by Train Cloud. Does walk up some members with the sound barrier. Company 8's mostly able to get away. Not entirely though, and forcing into that tiny little choke point against a Zarya and a Brig and a Torbjorn. Not gonna go well. For the first time this map, Hour Zero are actually going to be able to step onto the objective.
Now let's talk about what they kind of need to do to keep the objective going in their favor, right? I think starting off aggressively with the Supercharger is a good thing here. You want to be able to start snowballing in your favor, even perhaps the amplification matrix from Paradox. But then it's all about rotating your DPS ultimates and your tank ultimates, trying to get into a rotation. You're doing kind of well in the sense that the only thing you have to kind of work against right now is the Earth Shatter. If you can stop this push and get one ultimate away from Company 8, I think Hour Zero has a chance to hold on.
Supercharger's out. Company 8 not deterred by it. Atomic already down. Earth Shatter goes out, doesn't catch much of anything, and that's so many tools used to no advantage here for Company 0. Company 8, oh man, the numbers are gonna mess me up here, LaFon. Company 8 don't get much. Hour Zero hold strong.
They do have a small window here, though, in terms of what they have to shut it down. And if Hour Zero can do that, Company 8 will probably end up struggling in this next fight. The Dragon Blade hero is going to be the biggest difference. And if they can withstand the Molten Core, that's going to be, I think, the difference maker in this round.
ILY waiting for his opening. Gonna dive right in, just dash unafraid. Immortality shields it out. He gets both spooked off the high ground. Still found more than enough damage though. Hour Zero on the defense. Gonna throw out the grab. They know they cannot lose this fight or they will lose the round. Train Cloud getting some cleanup. He's got high energy but needs some healing. Oh, Paradox is trying so hard to pocket him and will be able to do so just enough for Hour Zero to hold on.
And now this is actually disastrous for Company 8, and with ILY going down, the Pulse Bomb forces the Doomfist ultimate here. Company 8, they need a miracle.
He's going in pretty much alone. Moved off the map, halted and everything. Beacam Power. What a nasty halt there.
All right, what are your tools if your company's if you're Company 8 coming into this next fight? Man, those numbers, as you said, they echo the last switch, but here's that amplification matrix to zone them out.
Oh, already Aster's gone. Echo's in, but not with the rest of the team. Company 8 are just slaughtered on the objective. Still pretty dang hard to pierce through a rally. Sure, the armor pack got a quote-unquote nerf. But Brig ult is still pretty dang good.
It is still very, very good, Paul. But I want to dial back to that fight that I sort of highlighted in the, at about the 70% or 60% mark for Hour Zero. That was the Dragon Blade versus the Molten Core. The fact that you're not able to, it's not a one-for-one trade, first of all, right? You don't get just one ultimate for one ultimate, or even the Dragon Blade for the Immortality Field and so on. You end up not even getting a pick off with 2 ultimates used against 1. And then all of a sudden now you're in an extremely negative scenario, and then you're looking for a miracle pickoff and it doesn't come through. So something I want to see coming into this next round is I think Company 8 has the tools required. It's just going to become a little bit more, they need a little bit more discipline in these fights if they want to really turn this round in their favor.
Tamaki already switching off too. It is mecha based, right? So Mei, very strong hero here. You're able to get some splits and chokes. It's more close quarters. You're able to freeze more easily. And it does allow them to take more of that brawl style rather than be all in, right? They can look to isolate members like Viral, who's gonna have to play a lot more carefully. Nasty Dynamite coming in there from Sinoid to start this fight off though, and Aster is isolated and eliminated. Both tanks now down for Company 8. They're not gonna be able to do much in this fight.
Yeah, it's a good read there by Hour Zero in terms of isolating that hard engage. And you can see immediately that's going to signal some swaps coming in from Company 8. You're not going to be able to, if your initial dive didn't work, then the likelihood of it working a second time is very slim now that the ultimate economy has started favoring Hour Zero. So this is a more standard composition, somewhat, in terms of the double shield.
Viral's picking up that Dragon Blade though. He's working up towards it. Does have to be a little bit careful. Still got to go in against, but now the Coalition. Most of Hour Zero is gone, but that's not going to stop Viral from trying to find value. Will he find it? The answer's no. Turns out when you don't have support as Genji, it's still pretty hard to find the value with the Dragon Blade, and thus it is a quick fight in favor of Company 8.
I think there's an argument to be made that Genji's power spike is actually in his neutral kit with his shurikens rather than with his Dragon Blade. In my opinion, if you get Immortality Field out with Dragon Blade and perhaps, you know, Amplification Matrix or Supercharger, I think you succeeded. There was just a Desperation Blade as he switches over now. They're going to run the core back.
ILY's got the Dragon Blade out himself. Just waiting for his opportune moment. Immortality Field going to be cut down. Paradox jumps over the last fight though, and ILY is baited in. First shot blocked by the shield too, everything going wrong. For Company 8, they've got to start finding eliminations, but they're just getting kited. Bible will finally get taken down. Pin stunned by the accretion, I believe, there. Good work from Train Cloud. And all in all, just a beautiful fight there for Hour Zero.
There was an example of what I was talking about, though, in terms of the Dragon Blade being used to pull cooldowns. The Supercharger and Immortality Field had to be committed. ILY, rather than just waiting it out, decided to go in after it. And that one I don't necessarily understand the logic behind. You did your job already. That being said, we now have the Blizzard on the field, and so with nothing to really shut it down, aside from Sigma's Kinetic Grasp, look to Tamaki to be the difference maker here.
Got to find this Blizzard. Not much to set him up. Not just fan trying to go for a boost, isolate somebody vulnerable, but not going to find it this time around. Just a slow push forward, nice wall, good isolation there. The tanks caught out, Immortality Field forced and eliminated. Now both Train Cloud and Camp Power are gone. There's not much to hold the objective down, and Tamaki even gets to hang on to his Blizzard for the next fight.
And I mean, that's exactly it. They're going to get a couple of stall kills here as Viral goes down late, but with Tamaki having such an important wall, such a clean wall into the Coalescence, he ends up making that impactful play, and now they have the tools to kind of continue this one in their favor, pushing that last Vampire Tree. Tamaki is still a character of very great importance, but this time, 2 fights in a row, still has the ult.
Shadow available to both tank ult activate for Company 8. Aster trying to walk forward here to get out of the beautiful Mei wall. Isolating nice. Power, not quite effectively. The Blizzard is eaten. Tamaki goes down immediately too. Aster gone. The choke point was supposed to be an advantage for Company 8, but not so much the case. It's Hour Zero who forced their way in.
Now, you know, Train Cloud is now the hero of the moment because he's also having the Gravitic Flux here in this next fight ball. from one hero play to another, a great deny, and now Our Zero looking at being able to close out this map with an aggressive push.
Our Zero pushing in very aggressively, already using the Gravitic Flux, but they lose Sinoid. He can't really capitalize off it. Low health members for Company A, but Nurse Shot are gonna stop the follow through in a sound barrier, keeping Company A on the offensive. Dragon Blade to clean it up. Not quite done with Busan just yet. Company A are gonna retake the point.
Yeah, it's such a late kill there. And now we're looking at, is there even a contest available for Our Zero? They're gonna have a late fight, but they're gonna need someone to tag here. Who's gonna be the hero to get to point?
No speedy characters for Our Zero. They've got 3% to touch the point. They've lost half their team already almost. I don't even think they get it, LaFon. Nope, no one contests. They went for the full fight, lost it. And Our Zero now, they're gonna have to take that last round to Busan if they want to take that first match.
Goes back to what we were. This goes back to what we were kind of mentioning at the start of the show, Paul, in terms of well, Our Zero specifically in terms of their ult economy and how that was one thing that we kind of needed to see from them to kind of trend towards a more positive situation the further we go into this tournament. I think those last 3 fights back to back to back, the team that should have won didn't necessarily, and that's because the ult usage was not efficient. Obviously, the Gravitic Flux doesn't get any kills, the Blizzard gets denied, and yes, both teams make a mistake, but I think that is certainly a key difference here. If you want to be in the winning column, you're gonna need to have moments where you shut down those plays more frequently than not.
Now we're gonna have a bit of a composition switch from Our Zero as we head into Sanctuary. Sinoid on the Widowmaker. This is one of his nastiest picks last week. But he needs to actually fight in the value, and he's not working into the same Widow 1v1 as when we last saw Our Zero on stream. Seems like he's being forced out too. A lot of pressure going on to him. He's completely isolated. Back towards spawn. You can see his little pixel actually X-ray there. That means it's a 5v6 in favor of Company A. They're just trying to run over Cam Bauer. 4-5 plus immortality fuel can make that pretty tricky. And already ILY low. Country Boy taken out. That's the main resource he's gone for Company 8. And they're just not able to capitalize off the one-player advantage they briefly gave themselves.
You'd think, one thing that you'd think is that with the May that you have a tank battle win, especially with the fact that Sinoid was so badly zoned out. But as you said, Company 8 don't take advantage of the spaces that they're given, and as a result, it forces back into Our Zero's favor once Sinoid's able to get out of spawn and find that headshot. Now heading to this next fight, we're looking at the DPS duel here as well. Can a Pulse Bomb land from Viral, or can ILY build up to the Blade? Because that's going to be, I think, the key difference maker here. The Genji needs to find some more value in this fight.
They're going to want to jump onto somebody vulnerable, but the Earthshatter just whips and Noctis is gone. This is disastrous for Company 8. They're not able to find anything in that fight whatsoever.
And again, it starts off with that DPS duel. I highlighted Viral. He gets a sick Pulse Bomb stick. And now ILY going to throw away the Blade percentage, goes over to Tracer, playing a bit of Mystery Heroes, trying to find something that sticks, and taking the duel ideally here with Viral, perhaps to burst down that front line a little bit. But I think all are really in Our Zero's favor here again, as they've got both support ultimates and Train Cloud with his Gravitic Flux.
ILY going on the long flank, looking for an early pick, helps his Moira find it with the value orb there. Train Cloud desperately throwing out that Gravitic Flux pretty late for that. Him and Viral the only ones really still on this objective. Country Boy pretty low. You find it, that could be the turnaround. Train Cloud now gone. Also available for Viral. Oh no, that was not the beefy target he was looking for. Got baited there by the silhouette of the pillar.
I mean, if you think about it, the pillar does have a ton of HP, seeing as how it withstands that many bullets from time to time. But again, now we're talking back to the ultimate timing, and Tamaki has the Blizzard. We need to see a Blizzard that's much more valuable than what we saw last round. It needs to land and be effective here.
It's an early supercharger from Camp Power. I don't even think the entirety of Our Zero was there yet. Camp Power's just going to lose the supercharger too. Viral on the back line. harassing JD. The rest of Hour Zero in some trouble. Transcendence keep him up through that blizzard, but can it do so during the Earth Shatter? Answer, not so much. Has to promote itself, but a sound barrier gonna keep him alive. Company 8 not done with this point, not done with the fight yet. Viral is a one-man army right now, but one man can only do so much.
I mean, that's still perfectly fine for Hour Zero. In the middle of all of that, the point flipped over, Paul, and yes, they're gonna get the stagger out kill onto Viral, but a ton of ults were forced to be committed by Company 8 that they're not going to have for this very important, critical next fight. You need to shut down the Pulse Bomb and Gravitic Flux, and you don't have the tools to do it. And with that Pulse Bomb whiffing, there's nothing here on the table for Company 8. Hour Zero has the advantage here.
Should have every tool they need to clean up this fight in this map. Paradox, you can't go down though. Very low health members here. Pop himself, now the Primal's out, he's gonna split up Hour Zero. Nice stun there from Paradox, but it's just gonna get the Rage of the Monkey right on his own head. JD not able to find much else. It's the 1-for-1 trade on supports. Now, Company have to back up to the objective. Jam having to put overtime, but with Zenoid finding picks like that onto ILY. Now there's so much less pressure. Deadeye gonna apply pressure of its own for Hour Zero, force Company 8 back. If you jiggle your head out just a little bit, you're gonna get caught and taken down, and that gives Viral all the space he needs to get in and start building up toward the next Pulse Bomb. But we're running out of time here for both teams.
This is definitely last fight territory, but there are tools coming online. Here's the Amplification Matrix.
Amplification Matrix and Astra just popped. Tamaki back now on the Doomfist. Needs to find some miracles in the back line. Ooh, that's such a huge pulse bomb there from Viral. Soundbarrier's gonna come out late. If Company 8 can actually get aggressive with it, they're gonna be able to take this, but no, it expires and they lose Tamaki too. It's a mess. It's everywhere. It's pandemonium right now. The Gravitic Flux completely whiffed from Train Cloud, but regardless, it's still going to be Hour Zero holding down this objective. Coalescence is the only thing keeping Company 8 in this fight right now, and it doesn't seem like it's going to do so for long. As soon as it expires, they run out of gas, and it's all Hour Zero, 90 to 99, but they'll get their flip.
They will get their flip, and now we're looking at last fight with absolutely nothing on the board here. ILY needs a hero pick with this Widow.
Noctis fan not even gonna be able to touch, no! Uh-oh. Well, that was a hard-fought map, hard-fought round, especially from both teams. Little bit of an anticlimactic finish to that. Tamaki will take away the consolation prize as the play of the game, but map 1 goes over to Hour Zero.
There's a lot of lessons we've learned from this first map, Paul, and I think the first and I think most important one is actually this play that you're seeing in the play of the game. The hyper-aggressive brawl that Company 8 came out with. Hour Zero, they lost it at first read, but, you know, recognized the tools that they needed to come back in and played a much more reserved, much more passive game style and sort of punished the aggression that was being run by the brawl that the brawl needs to survive on. And I think that is the most important key here is a good read from Hour Zero that lends them, I think, ultimately the win in the end. And couple of really, really smart plays overall in map number 1.
Yeah, credit to Hour Zero. You know, I loved what I was seeing, and I gotta give it out to, or I gotta give a shout out to Viral as always. We didn't see so much of his Tracer last week. It was mostly his Genji, but gotta give it to the guy. He was pulling overtime on Tracer.
I think that's actually there's a little story to be drawn from here in terms of the Genji versus Tracer too that you kind of mentioned here is that Genji is really strong in his current form, right? A ton of damage with his shurikens, absolutely. Farms blade so quickly. He can really assassinate targets in a way that doesn't get, you know, that's not really punishable, and it can force cooldowns out that are not particularly easy to deal with. But I think the bigger difference here is that the Tracer's able to flank much more solo, play a little bit more carefree compared to Genji, which does need more resources. And so that's one of the differences, I think, between the Genji and the Tracer here that we're seeing is that Viral's playing the Tracer certainly less as a team player and more as I'm dragging so much attention away from my opponent that my front line can start to do things as well. And I think on Control especially, that works really well. I'm curious to see how that evolves heading into our next map types. Although Hybrid, of course, coming up next. Kings Row most likely. Kings Row definitely actually.
Yes.
In our second map. So will that style of playing sort of the flank tracer continue? I think not, but certainly an opportunity here for Vile to prove that DPS prowess.
Well, and let's talk about Kings Row as we head in onto the map, because I feel like this is generally a pick that most teams will take you to, especially in here in the tier 3 kind of area, right? Everybody's comfortable on this map, but I think for Company 8, it's kind of going to double for them because they can play much more of this Reinhardt that they've been alluding to. The Doomfist here on point A is pretty good. I'm excited to see how they roll out here on Kings Row.
Certainly. I mean, there was a joke made the other day by some of the Overwatch League production that we may as well change the Map 2 subtitle to just Kings Row, or change Kings Row's name to Map 2, as that is almost always the pick. But I mean, we're gonna see Company here on the defense first, as Hour Zero elects to run their offense. And I mean, the Doomfist on defense is certainly a lot harder to make work. So despite Tamaki's self-professed love for that character, we're gonna see the opening of the Mei here.
And Mei, I mean, also a very good hero here on Kings Row.
The utility of the wall, the slow, and certainly makes tanks' lives pretty miserable.
Noctis fan actually had a very late swap here. Was hovering over the brig for the majority of it, and just now swapped to Lucio. So as we roll out, I mean, it's Lucio. He'll be there, but I'm interested as to what the thought process there might have been. Viral going to be on the Echo. This was another one of his picks last week where he was nasty in the back line, applying so much pressure, and when he got the distraction, Sinoid was able to take advantage. That being said, it seems like Company 8 are just like, yeah, you can chill over there. We're going to kill your tank line over in the theater. Not really worry about you too much, Viral.
I mean, Hour Zero was sort of taking their time, and as a result, it was, let's go in and enter, but that may end up being their demise, as Hour Zero is going to be able to pull them back pretty safely after getting that pick off the off tank.
And who's going to deal with Viral right now? There's nobody in the composition of Company 8 that can even think about dealing with Viral at range, right? Nobody's gonna shut him down. He can just poke and kite all day long. Now the remainder of Company 8 is stuck in the hotel as the second pick nearly goes over to Hour Zero. They've waltzed onto the objective, and they're gonna clean it up post-haste.
And I mean, theoretically, the idea of playing aggressively there is not necessarily a bad one, but if you don't end up getting those consecutive pickoffs, then you're just kind of giving away progress, and that's exactly what happens, right? So Viral, I believe, used the duplicate at some point.
Actually decided that he got it so fast, he just used it at the end of the fight.
Yeah.
Maybe having a bit too much fun now. Gonna go down early in a split here onto BCAM Bauer yet again from Company 8. Is actually gonna give them control of the payload.
Yeah, that was a very greedy play from Hour Zero. After, you know, one greedy play deserves another, I suppose, in this situation. Now we're gonna see a spawn camp actually from Company 8. High ground look right away.
Going for a little bit more of that brawl to help out his team as they get out of spawn. Immortality Field going to allow them to. JD not in the ideal position to help his team. Just going to go in, see if he can get some cleanup kills. Stall this out as much as possible. You're not really playing to win this fight if you're Company 8. It's more to see just how much you can stall off the block. But while we still got these straggle picks being found by Hour Zero on the Company 8, the payload was moving all the while.
The payload is actually only going to get out halfway through this second phase here before there's a fight. So realistically, you built up some significant ult percentage here. You're coming into both tank ultimates, both DPS ultimates, which are going to be key difference makers, I think, in this next fight. Now you're about even in terms of economy with Company 8. Hour Zero no longer looking as easily a win as before.
Accretion high up into the air, beautifully placed by JD there, but unfortunately that blade wasn't as potent as ILY would have liked. Davidic Flux not going to salvage this either. JD just getting run over by Train Cloud. Tamaki going out the blizzard too, but nobody's found Frozen in it. There's no picks here for Company 8. They had all the tools in their belt, LaFon, but they're not able to get any nails hammered into the board. Just yet another stall. Thankfully the cryo freeze from Tamaki going to allow him to do so pretty proficiently, but thus far, Hour Zero looking undeterred in point B.
And where I thought the spawn camp actually ended up working out to Company 8's favor, I think this defense was so much worse. You commit everything and I think get exactly one pick off between 4 ultimates. That's just not a trade you can make. And heading into this next fight, the only thing you're really missing if you are Hour Zero is the support ultimates. You have everything online here.
JD's always doing so much damage. Earthshatter going out, catches 3. That's the only chance for the defense to turn this around. Astra's gone, Noctis closed the sound barrier. Not really much found there for Company 8. Hour Zero just slowly working this forward. Tamaki's going to try and stall as long as possible, but it's just not happening right now for Company 8. The Stragglers only managing to delay second.
And now, what are you looking for as you head in? Tamaki and ILY both going back to just high burst picks. You need just hero moments. 3.5 minutes left on the clock as last fight is happening here on the end of King's Row.
ILY once again switching over to Widow, going for those hero picks you're mentioning, but gonna just get demolished there. Dynamite setting up Paradox beautifully, and once the first domino falls, the rest of Company 8 aren't far behind. All the ults thrown on the board. Hour Zero decide they're done with their attack. Complete King's Row with 3:13 in the bank.
And the thought process, if you're Company 8 on the defense at the very end there is, we need a hero play, we need a hero pick, we need a hero moment, and it does not come through. You cannot be giving fights away and relying on those hero moments. There are some fantastic players on these rosters. I mean, we've seen Tamaki do some fantastic stuff on the Doomfist, but your game plan cannot be, Hail Marys. Your gameplay has to be based in cohesive Overwatch, first of all. And I think here, that's something that Company 8's going to have to really approach as they head into their offense in the next part of King's Row. Because I'm seeing basically, you're seeing moments where you're looking like you have the right process, and in the very next fight, you're throwing all that progress away. So for Company 8, just a coalescing of their ideas is going to have to come through on their offense.
Well, and it's back to what worked for them way back at the beginning of Busan. Tamaki back on the Doomfist. Viral's still going to be rocking this Echo, though, and with how good Viral has been on the Echo thus far, especially here on point A, I'm worried about who's going to actually deal with him, LaFon.
I mean, it's still difficult to get in with that cooldown rotation, right? Like it's a high risk, high reward. If you can get in for free without eating the accretion, without eating the dynamite, without without getting sort of zoned out, you can actually do a lot of work, but that's a lot of butts to go through first.
Straight on to the point here for Company 8. Not quite up to that first pick, and they've already lost ILY. Good contestation coming in from the defense, and already some split members for Company 8. Tamaki has to retreat to the room while the rest of his team is not having so much luck on the point. Now he's back, but who's there helping him? Viral's just poking into the back line, finding a pick already. He's all alone though, and one by one, Hour Zero have gone on to the objective and not found the trades to favor them. That was dicey for Company 8, but they make it work and they'll get more edge.
You say that, that's not necessarily done enough to get.
Lucio. It's fine. Oh,
I mean,
it is actually a pretty decent contest here. Coming in from Hour Zero, Train Cloud rather, coming back on the Wrecking Ball. He's able to stall a lot of time, but it's just one by one that Hour Zero are coming in right now. And not finding any picks to boot means they won't be able to stick.
Or that was possible. Aster was 1 HP at one point during that engagement. Now, though, they are in a very healthy scenario because with Hour Zero electing to go for that stall, yes, they burnt about 30 seconds, but now you're in a really awkward position where you may end up just losing out parts of the map. This is a good Paul on the ground, but you may end up losing out parts of the map. Paul, they're going for this.
3 already. We're at the end of the map, guys. The payload's still back by A. Come on, let us get out of spawn at least. Company 8 are gross right now. Look at Country Boy. He's just chilling. Meanwhile, his duplicate's out. Nearly everything on the board ultimate-wise for Company 8 as they retreat to the payload.
Now, that used to be called the Selfless strat, where you would go to the spawn doors. The difference is that Selfless would win those fights, 5v6. if you don't win those 5v6 fights, you've just thrown away a ton of resources. And Hour Zero, which once looked dicey, are actually back in this. Yes, the ult economy is back in Company 8's favor, but there is room here for the, well, Bob's going in already for the point contest.
Bob's on the objective. I think that payload's not going anywhere. Jam will be going somewhere though. He's going back to spawn pretty early in this fight. That's a lot of healing. Paradox gonna have to pull out this Transcendence pretty early once the pressure actually gets applied. Viral gone too. Supercharger's down on the objective, but nobody's there to really capitalize off it. So the rest of the ultimate's just gonna be held on to by Hour Zero. They don't really get what they were looking for there.
ILY has decided that it's his turn to get back on to the kill feed. Comes in clutch with 3 kills there. 1 solo pickoff onto Jam at the start of the fight to open it up. And now, 5 minutes on the clock. This is a very healthy time bank. ILY has really come to the forefront of this Tracer in the latter half of this map.
Got that pulse bomb at the ready too. So much available.
What a setup,
For
though.
Company 8. Oh, I love this setup.
Oh, the immortality feels down early, too. They can go.
Gravitic Flux at the ready. JD knows he's got his opening. Transcendence forced out from Paradox will keep everybody alive through JD's ultimate at least. Oh, what a good accretion there. On to Paradox, setting that up for ILY too. Beautiful teamwork coming out right now from Company 8. Now they just got to put the punctuation on this take. Such clean offensive strategies on Earth Shadow from Viral, laying out most of Company 8 here, and that actually seems to be giving enough steam to where this stall can be continued.
Yeah, they are going to get 1 pickup. They need these cleanup kills right now, but the longer this lasts, the closer this can be for a recontest. Paul, Dazari's back in action.
Yeah, Trinkcloud's there, a little bit low. Immortality Field going to keep him alive, though. And I'd like to see Company 8 just back this one out. Aster, you're not going to get this done alone. The respawns are so much closer here for the Hour Zero.
Viral's going to come in over the top, too. Oh, the pulse... A very efficient reset. A very efficient reset there from ILY. If he switches characters, as he does. Ooh. But I mean, that last fight, it's just a scrap at the end, and the closer respawns helps you come out. The Graviton Surge is online here, so Draincloud's just gonna try and play very aggressively around this. There's nothing except JD to really stop that damage from coming through.
Oh, and speaking of damage, Supercharger on the board. Aster looking for this Earth Shadow around the shield. He'll find it too. Gets Draincloud, but can't quite find the pin out of the Immortality Field. Draincloud's gonna live long enough to throw that grab out and help his team wipe the rest of Company 8. JD? With a bit of clutch there at the end? Not too sure about that one. Hopefully he's gonna swap.
He's not, and even worse, Tomek is actually going to switch over here. JD perhaps, no, staying with the Gravitic Flux, staying with not staying with the Gravitic Flux, staying with the Sigma though. I mean, what was once a very clean entry, which 5 minutes on the clock is now looking very dire actually for Company 8. They're going to have to build up to one last fight. They have nothing. They're just hoping this fight goes long enough that they can build ultimates for their next engagement.
Miracle here from ILY. No a little quiet on the Widow. Eventually he'll find that pick onto Sinoid, but now he's getting run upon. Has to go through the Molten Core to get back with the rest of his team in an Amplification Matrix going to keep Company 8 at bay.
Was just popping and looking for Daze, I think, as ILY was able to cut off. But a switch comes in now. They need to find a kill here. And Company 8, there it is. Sinoid down.
Sinoid down, but you gotta capitalize on that. Sooner rather than later, Sinoid will be back in this fight momentarily, and there's just not enough to pull the trigger here for Company 8. They finally got that Amplification Matrix at the ready for Country Boy. Just gonna wait this one out. Finally gonna pull the pressure. Hull's gonna bring Hour Zero forward into the line of damage, but Draincloud is just chilling on the flank right now. Gonna help Viral pick up that kill onto Country Boy. So 1-for-1 on that team. So not quite over by just yet, but you need a clean take here. If you're Company 8, it's just not happening.
And I mean, Sinoid actually takes the 1v1, well, 1v1 with ILY. And, you know, with a Widow duel, if your pop-off character isn't popping off, then you're suddenly basically worse than useless. It's a 5v6 the rest of the way. ILY takes down Viral, but it's not going to matter in the grand scheme of things. And I'm looking at Company 8. What do they have in this next engagement? You're going to build up to the Gravitic Flux, but you're running out of time. You have to capture with time in the time bank. a good start here. You could, if you go for the play right now, there's an opportunity for Company A to close this round out.
Gotta pull the trigger. Sound Barrier coming out to give Company A the advantage they are looking for. ILY just being harassed by Viral, though. Doesn't even know where the Echo went. Tapped in the shot and will be able to. Sinoid, yet again, that's what I was talking about. Viral distracting. Sinoid finds the pick that opens it all up for Hour Zero. They get the easy shutdown, and once again, JD's Gravitic Flux not finding anything of value. That payload ain't going anywhere.
Now we're looking at a very real situation where this round is just closed out here. 30 seconds remain on the clock, Paul, and with that Gravitic Flux being committed again, you were hoping for an overtime fight that just barely captures payload. At this point, I don't see Company 8 even closing out this map on Kings Row.
Even if they did, they'd have to play for the draw. Not much available, only the infra site at the beginning of this fight, and it's already mostly expired as Company 8 finally get in. ILY just getting harassed up toward the top two. Tamaki finds a nice opening pick, but you've got to actually keep your team alive. Viral with the Genji of his own won't be able to find much of anything, but it's just keeping ILY at bay. 1 health! Literally 1 health on Viral, but he's able to get away, still applying pressure to the back line while the rest of Hour Zero are unmoving on the payload. Asher's back in the wrecking ball, but he's not going to find anything, especially with that Discord orb on him. Gravitic Flux, just flashy there. It's not necessary, but Hour Zero take another win here. They're just 1 away from putting this series to bed.
In moments, it looks so good for Company 8 as Paradox gets the highlight here. Like, it looks so good for Company 8 in fights. They had 5 minutes on third, but the problem is they get a little bit into their own heads at points, right, Paul? And they're just, they're unable to close out maps, throwing away resources a lot of the time. So I think that has been the big difference here between Hour Zero and Company 8. Mechanically, they're about on par with each other. What it comes down to, though, is those micro engagements. And right now, Hour Zero very heftily in the advantage it shows in the map score.
And shout out to Hour Zero. I feel like they're coming into all of these fights with a plan, right? And they're executing on it. Now, some plans go better than others for Hour Zero, but generally speaking, they're at least playing around what their win conditions are. And you can imagine that the communication from these players is top notch with how well they're able to find the smallest of openings, right? Like, I'm gonna call back to Viral and Sinoid because I feel like they work so dang well together. With Viral just going in and saying, I have the Widow distracted, right? Maybe he doesn't even need to say it. Maybe the awareness from Sinoid is just that top tier, but being able to find picks off the back of Viral's distraction. And when Viral isn't the distraction, he's just finding a ridiculous amount of value, right? So
yeah,
it's such a, done if you deal with Viral, done if you don't deal with Viral situation here for Company 8 and Hour Zero. They're applying so much pressure.
And one of the most interesting things is you speak about the pressure and sort of the damage throughput that Viral's giving through is that Genji surprisingly hasn't been sort of the focus that's come in, which I think is probably the most impressive part. We've seen a lot of Tracer. We've seen Echo here now on map number 2. The fact that Genji has kind of been sort of an ancillary character for Hour Zero, I think speaks volumes as to the play style they're going for, right? Genji, we've seen how strong he can be in the last couple of weeks since his buffs came through.
Yeah.
But I think there has been sort of a change in terms of, all right, we don't want to play that kind of burst damage throughput. We want to continue that harass from flanks, and both Echo and Tracer are doing a great job of that. Obviously, depending on map geometry, Kings are a little bit more vertical, so Echo can get a little bit more cover, and it finds a ton of value. I think certainly, though, for Company 8, as we head into Escort, as we head into map number 3, if they want a chance at not being shut out in this match, we're going to need to see a little bit more efficiency, a little bit more clinical gameplay, really. I need to see more from them that isn't just throwing away good ultimates after bad fights. When you're the only one left standing, I don't want to see a high-impact ultimate being committed. I think that right now, Company 8 will win even 10% more fights, and that can equal, a map closeout if you have those resources in a contested engagement.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, Company 8, you can tell there's you were talking about it earlier, the mechanical skill. ILY is almost holistically winning the 1v1s against Sinoid, right? But we call them ultimates for a reason, right? And when you throw away a bunch of gravitic fluxes, oh man, there's a joke there I don't think I can make on broadcast, but you get on the sour end of that, to be sure, right? So
No.
a little bit more, what's a good word for it? Discipline, I suppose, coming out from Company 8, and they can start to see miles of improvement. We're going to be heading into the next map pretty soon here. Company 8, once again, as a reminder for anyone who might be new to watching Prospect Cup or just forgot how the format works, is, you know, I'm pretty dumb. I do that sometimes. It's best of 5. Well, first to 3 technically here. Loser of the previous map will pick the next one, and Company 8 have elected to go to Dorado.
Dorado, and I mean, certainly a pick that could come back to haunt them in terms of the play style that Hour Zero has been bringing to the table, right?
You don't sound like you're a fan of this pick, LaFon.
I mean, but to be fair, where else do you go? Like, I'm trying to think of map types or maps within Escort that you go to. You're like, we're continuously going to be better at this map, right? Obviously, you've practiced this map if you're Company 8, and so therefore picking it makes sense because you're used to it. But I think in terms of what Hour Zero is playing, in terms of how they're kind of playing Viral and Sinoid, who both, I have to say, have continued to impress on whichever character they're playing. So the Ashe and the Widow have been, and even the McCree at points, as we saw on Busan. But then obviously the Tracer, Genji, Echo have looked pretty good as well. So for Dorado, the question is, can you work around the flexibility that Hour Zero has brought to the table? And
Sure.
at least from the first 2 maps, the answer has tentatively got to be no.
Well, and let's talk about Hour Zero compositionally, right? I mean, well, not just Hour Zero, Dorado compositionally, right? And let's start with Hour Zero because I feel like Dorado lends itself to a lot of what Hour Zero has been playing, right? I mean, Genji, Echo, Tracer, all pretty good on this map. You can run whatever hit scan you want. I'm definitely expecting Sinoid to have a Widowmaker that he's willing to bring out here. I wouldn't be that surprised. Whereas, you
Play
know,
the Ashe here too. Like the
oh,
Ashe
yeah,
will
you can
look
absolutely
pretty
play the
strong.
Ashe. Well, and when you look at Company 8, right, I feel like, I mean, you were kind of alluding to this a minute ago. It's not easy to find an Escort map in general that, you know, a brawl rush composition works best on. But Dorado's a pretty tricky one at that.
Yeah, and I get the feeling too that Tamaki hasn't been really comfortable in the hero select menu so far this match. We saw the Doomfist come out and look very strong on the first run of Busan, but ever since then, Tamaki has been kind of, he's had his moments. I think mechanically he's absolutely had those pop-off moments, but more often than not, he's had to play more of a guiding role. Part of that in due to the fact he's playing Mei. Mei is not really known for her very explosive potential. It's certainly a way of putting it, but even beyond that, it feels like we're talking about ILW a lot and not so much Tamaki, and I think coming into Dorado here, especially in an 0-2 situation, I need to see from Tamaki just a little bit more confidence in these fights, really going for those pickoffs.
Ooh, well, as we come out onto Dorado, ILY certainly not lacking the confidence in himself, finding that immediate pick. A little bit of a spectator bug there, but it's fine. It doesn't mean that ILY is hindered whatsoever. Will retreat as that payload's going forward. You never really see, well, I mean, you used to see contests that early, but not these days, not with long-range compositions when you got the Echo and the Widow on the defense.
Yeah. And I mean, Viral's going to try and look to get in the back line here and just, again, cause trouble, cause pain and discomfort. And Company 8 are going to have to kind of ignore that as they look for that first fight that they can take 6v6.
Tamaki playing at range himself. Just chilling right now. Gonna go for a long rotation back. A lot of space being seeded here by Company 8 on their defense. They're gonna finally put their foot down and try to hold here in the courtyard. They're only really gonna get one fight, and it's not gonna be a fight if Tamaki goes down early. All that pressure, all those resources being invested on Tamaki means that Aster doesn't have many himself, and it's just clinical from Hour Zero.
I mean, you touched on this in the middle of the fight, but so much space was given up by Company 8 for no reason. Tamaki's taking a bunch of flanks that isn't getting any value. If you're going to go for those long-range flanks, you better be generating ult charge extremely quickly. Unfortunately, only up to 63%, and now we're in a situation where, with Company 8, okay, now we can say, we can start putting more resources to ILY. It opened up a little bit more. The Widow can start to get pickoffs. This is what we're trying to see. Can Company 8 use those resources to their effect? Because right now, that's really all they have going for them.
ILY, pretty nasty thus far. Finds that pick on the Viral too, but once again, not much really gained out of it. It's more just for the highlight reel for ILY than it is for this match at this point. Viral's already back. Easy train. Not going forward. Gets the wrong end of focusing in there with good healing coming out from his backline to keep him feeling tip-top. Now with Bob down on point, it's just a huge damage advantage for Hour Zero. And once again, once the fight actually starts here, Hour Zero don't really feel challenged.
No, not at all. And I mean, that wasn't a particularly expensive fight either. Bob and Amplification Matrix were what was committed. So here in the closeout point of this second phase, you're going to have the Gravitic Flux and Supercharger. You're going to be able to brawl with advantage. And I think here, a good start for Company 8, but they need more.
Well, second point there going over to Hour Zero. They're just indomitable thus far. Rally to keep them going forward. They don't want to stop. Aster's still having fun. He gets Epic on a train cloud. Doesn't mean anything, but goes for the DBI switch just to keep his head in the game.
I mean, there's one small problem coming to this next fight, though, is that for Company 8, they have 6 ults, and we know the saying, 6 ults, you lose.
Personne n'échappe à mon regard.
I mean, I suppose that'll definitely help. Viral going down is going to be a big difference, but ILY so aggressive.
Ooh. And ILY had to use the grappling hook there to get the health pack, so he had nowhere to go once he actually was even healed back up, right? So even if Sinnoh didn't find that, somebody else would have. Now Hour Zero can just walk on forward. Tommy down too. Aster getting a good bit of work done just here sitting on the objective. The tank line trying to hold this down. Good pulse bomb. Noctis gonna keep it away from the rest of his team, but Respawn's pretty close here for Company 8. They can't stagger back into this. Tank's not quite able to stay alive, but that's not the cleanest fight for Hour Zero. They're finally going to be stopped, at least momentarily.
I mean, so far that would have been the case, but there. Okay, with Paradox going down, I was worried for a second there. You know, with how these fights have been going, Company 8 has given up these advantages before. That was a very clean fight from a very good fight for Company 8 in the sense that they pulled out a ton of resources from Hour Zero. If they could continue that here, they could buy some time off the clock, and boy, do they need it, because with 3:45 left, Hour Zero has several cracks at this objective.
Iowa nearly has the pulse bomb. He's been pretty dominant on the hit scan rolls thus far compared to his opposition. Viral already gone. That gives him a lot of space too. Pulse bomb going straight on into that tiny little corridor forces the immortality field, and now that means Tamaki, if he finds even so much as a swipe, he can get it done. Beautiful work here from Company 8. They can just walk away content with what they've already gotten done. Country Boy going down. That's a little rough, but he should be back in time.
I mean, they've given up the high ground, though, so Company 8 are back in a disastrous position because they're going to get this soft reset here. Company 8, they're looking really rough.
Gravitic Flux, though. Oh, that's nasty from Train Cloud. He gets them all slammed onto the ground there. Now Viral's got this pulse bomb. He can throw it onto whoever he likes to make sure that Hour Zero finally completes this cap. They had over a 5-minute time bank, so it's being whittled down to about 2:30. Ain't half bad, and actually the respawn's starting to come back here. Viral being distracted in the backline. Okay, he'll come back onto the point with Sinnoh's help, remove some team members, just still go over Hour Zero without too much of a fuss.
Again, heroics are what's needed, and they're not coming through. It's all Hour Zero in the kill feed call, and Hour Zero is going to close out the map here in just a moment.
Well, they're not done with the map quite yet. They'll close out their attack Levon.
Certainly.
Still you know, I gotta give it to Company 8 though. That was a pretty dang good stall considering that at about 3 minutes that fight looked like it was over, and they whittled it down to nearly 2.
That sounds like you're trying to find small moments of victory in what is ultimately not a great situation if you're Company 8. And
I didn't say it was a good situation. I just give credit where credit is due, Lafon.
Speaking of credit where credit is due, though, ILY here, the Widow was a pick. It worked a couple of times, but you just end up not able to take... the biggest difference here is that ILY was unable to get value for his team, whereas on Tracer, he was able to do that, right? He started to pull aggression away from the front line and give space for the rest of Company 8 to kind of find their entry. Widow, it doesn't matter if those pickoffs come in, if you're just going to lose the frontline brawl. So that has been, I think, a difference, and one of the reasons why I would like to see ILY play more of those Brawl-style characters as they head to their attack.
You're so friggin' mean, LaFon. Speaking of credit where credit is due, ILY on the Widow didn't get anything done despite some good pick. Why do you gotta be so mean? He's
Wasn't
looking
that.
nasty thus far. We just
No.
need some more space here for Company 8, and he'll get crazy with it. I mean, now he's over on the Genji, so once again on their attack, seems like Company 8 gonna go for more of a full dive. Gonna be rolling out here with the Zarya and the Wrecking Ball too.
Yeah, they have to go all in on protecting their Brawl because Viral has the Torbjorn, and that just so much pressure taken with the turret. It's a triple crossfire here now from the defense. Genji's gonna really struggle on the entry.
Sinoid playing pretty far back. I mean, this is sort of just the poking phase. No one takes fights this early. Oh, JD, gotta be a little careful. Don't want to get caught there. Now
Like,
the
what's
rotation
ILY?
coming
It's 1
out.
HP.
Yeah, he's fine. He's fine. 1 HP is all you need to live later on. Tamaki unfortunately doesn't have 1 HP. He has 0, so he'll get sent back to spawn. What a nasty bloop 2 there. Can you actually capitalize on it though? Company 8, you gotta find picks. You isolate members down onto the low ground, but looks like the rest of Hour Zero, which is on the same page, willing to jump on down to help their tank. And not much comes out of that from Company 8.
I mean, ILY gets 1, but
Hello.
these have been very painful trades. That being said, the offense is going to be able to perhaps snowball that one in. It is a quick pick coming back, so ILY will be back much faster than Paradox will. However, they're walking to a Molten Core, and that can just shut down the point basically by himself.
Ooh, good projected barrier there at the very end to keep JD alive. He had gone down off the back of a lot of resources being committed. That would have been pretty much the end of it. ILY against Banano? That's pretty early. Didn't have a blade yet. Just gonna be eliminated post-haste. Can't find his stun there without too much trouble. Now the rally is gonna let Hour Zero just walk on forward and clean up the rest of Company 8.
That's the power of Molten Core, though, right? The nano boost there, you can build up that 20% blade percentage very quickly, but with the... Why?
For fun, LaFon.
So
You gotta go for the clutch.
I was making a point there about how Molten Core can really shut down an aggressive play, but ILY just dumps the blade in a fight that he was never going to win. Yeah, but you could have gotten a fight.
I mean, but there's also an argument to be made that, like, if you hold on to it to the next fight and that's not the composition that you think will work, then you've kind of just wasted it for nothing, right? You know,
Yeah.
Things didn't really think up there for Company 8.
He needs to shut down this. He needs to get a pick here, and he needs to shut down the turret. There it is. That's
There it
the
is.
open we need.
ILY coming alive. Look where he is. Who allowed this man to get this far back? Now the Graviton Surge is out too. Beautiful, clean, decisive fight off the back of the take from Company 8.
Basically, Sinoid, by losing the 1v1, allowed ILY to make that flank. Under the most technical definition. That is a huge ult bump to get in to this point, though, and they needed it. Because with only a minute left on the clock, they're running out of time here in second phase. Yes, it's 3.5 minutes, but you need to win a fight cleanly here if you want to get to third with time bank. They're already struggling in that situation. Raincloud out of
Aggressive
position
there
here.
right now, though.
Yeah.
Company 8, Trainclaw gets caught over on the side. The rest of his team manages to get there. ILY will stay alive up in the top of the Cathedral there. A split here positionally. And a solo prevented Flux on Aster. He doesn't have anything to keep himself alive, though. All his utility, all his resources are already expended. And Traincloud turns what was a weird haphazard flank into a fight win pretty much solo.
I mean, they have the problem is the Wrecking Ball is never going to be able to take as much space as a properly supported Sigma, and even with Aster there, Traincloud just has the run of the area and also takes advantage of the open that he's given. Oh no, ILY so dangerous there into the amplification matrix.
That's fine. Still alive.
Uh-huh.
He can't- well, okay, now it's less fine. Now it is significantly less fine. Rally 2 on the cart. This should be an easy hold. 4 Hour Zero. JD just rolling last time against the pulse charge, trying to distract so the rest of his team can stay alive.
Now, I mean, here's that Molten Core that's going to buy enough time on the payload to start building back towards those tank ultimates, right? So Viral here is going to be able to support his team until the rest of... Oh, ILY goes down again.
Yeah, it's so hard to enter as a Widowmaker here. You really only have 2 good angles to come from. Aster taking a lot of pressure. Tamaki already down. No damage available left for Company 8. This is tough going for them right now. They're nearly at a couple key ultimates, but they're not really finding any advantages.
And remember what I said about Molten Core being able to sort of start building back up toward, buy time to build up towards the rest of the resources for Hour Zero? That's exactly where we are right now. Another swap comes in as JD goes over to the Winston and Aster to the Reinhardt. It's Mystery Heroes now for Company 8. They're looking for something, anything to give them advantage, Paul. And it feels like they don't have an answer for what Hour Zero is bringing.
Well, Bob's down on the point. Aster swapped over to the Reinhardt. At least finds an opening pick, but JD gone too. Now it's just the Reinhardt who locks this down, and still nearly 2 tank ultimates available for Hour Zero. Viral's gone, so you gotta play a little bit more on the back foot for Hour Zero. Gotta give some space for the first time in a long time. And with Big Camp Bauer down, Train Cloud antied. It'll be a much-needed breath of fresh air for Company 8, but they got a long way to go.
A long way to go and no time to do it. A minute left on the clock here, Paul, and your walk, you need Tamaki's Nano Blade here to be huge. Oh, if Aster goes down, this is disastrous.
I mean, Aster is nearly done. Good Bionic Grenade there from Country Boy to give him the healing necessary to live. 1-for-1 trade, tank for DPS. Kind of debatable as to whether or not that's worth it, especially considering you're going to be back so soon. Tamaki going in with the blade. He only finds the turret thus far with the Nano Blade. He just gets lifted, juggled. And the Molten Core shuts down Aster. The payload was moving all the while, but it's not going to get to the end of the point.
Nope, that's actually it. 20 seconds remaining on the clock here, Paul. It's all staggered fight. I don't think there is really a moment where a contest even happens here for Company 8.
Desperation now. JD off the map.
6 seconds.
Probably the person who was looking to contest. Now it's just up to Tamaki to blink onto the point. Immediately will get hit with a rock in the face. The rest of Company 8 looking like they're gonna follow suit. Hour Zero 3-0 looks so dang strong. And like a team to keep your eye on as we continue out the rest of the Prospect Cup.
More impressive even than just how the fact that it was a 3-0 is how that 3-0 happened. A misstep, I think, early on in terms of the read of what Company 8 were going to be. They were surprised. But then from then on, Hour Zero just got better and better throughout the later stages of this match even. And it really came through. Train Cloud coming in clutch with the play there. And Hour Zero, super confident, super clinical, super in position there. They take an easy 3-0, I think, and look good the whole time.
They're just all on the same page. You know, they're clearly very drilled as to what they want to accomplish on each map, in each fight. It's very clinical, clean Overwatch from them right now. Despite some messier fights, they're still able to recompose themselves at every turn, it seems.
I fully agree. I want to take a moment to actually talk about Company 8, though, because it may seem like I think there was some very, very good mechanical play there, especially from ILY, who was really impressive in terms of every hero he played, I think, at least providing some value for Company 8. It's tough to draw, moments of real learning experience from a match like this because it was such a dominant 3-0. But I think certainly across the board, Company 8, it feels like they're an Hour Zero, but perhaps a month before, right? A month before where Hour Zero is right now in terms of sort of the efficiency, in terms of sort of the teamwork. I think that's sort of what the difference making is between these two teams. It's not mechanical because toe-to-toe, both teams played each other very close. It really does come down to those engagement moments in terms of ult economy, in terms of resource management. I mean, that's where these two teams are separated right now, but credit to Hour Zero looking incredibly dominant through this 3-0.
They certainly look like they've had their practice, and Hour Zero have come together as a team, and thus far, or as such, rather, they're going to be taking away the win here in the first match of tonight in the Prospect Cup. That's the Eastern Division, folks. Stick around after this break, though, because we've still got the Western Division, and this is the spicy matchup. We've got the two teams tied for first, Regen and Lunaris, fighting for the head of the leaderboard over in the Western Division when we come back in just a minute.